Where are we?
This is Mark McNeese in New York City, and you're listening to another edition of Live Mic with Mark. Welcome to the podcast, and this is Mark here in New York City. My guest is already on the line. It's Jeff McKeehan from Phoenix, Arizona, correct?
That is correct. Actually, it's a suburb called Chandler, but we're very close to Phoenix.
Oh, okay. And when we were talking before, you mentioned that you lived in Connecticut.
Yes, I lived in New England for 14 years altogether. I'm not originally from there. I moved to Connecticut from Kentucky, which is where my family is based. But I was there in Connecticut in different parts of the state for 14 years. And then in 2001, I moved from Connecticut to Arizona, and I love it.
Oh, did you move with your husband Dave, or did you meet him there?
I met my husband Dave here in Phoenix. I actually came here with my late husband Stan,
Okay.
and sadly he passed away about a year and a half after we arrived here. But it was our desire to get away from the snow, the potholes, and all that. And, we ended up in Scottsdale, which is a very nice place to be, coming from anywhere. It's, full of resorts and palm trees and what have you. So, Arizona in general is a nice state. It's, got a lot going for it, I think.
Now, you, you describe yourself as a medium and intuitive reader.
Yes, that is correct.
So can you just talk a little bit about that? What is,
Sure.
People who may not know how you define that?
Sure. Well, a medium, by my definition, and most people that I have worked with and been around, is someone who communicates with spirits, someone who is able to see or hear or otherwise perceive someone who has crossed over into the spirit realm. An intuitive reader is someone who is able to, it's almost the same as a psychic, in that we work with our intuition, which is, tends to be heightened, and we get vibrations from our client, about what's going on with them. So if we're lucky, we're able to combine information that we receive from the other side along with information that we're actually getting from the client to help them answer questions or to provide them with well-rounded answers to things they might be wondering about, or simply to convey the messages that are coming over from the spirit or spirits who are able and willing to make themselves known to the medium. That's a long answer, I know, but basically, I talk to spirit.
Well, how does that information come to you? Is it thoughts or sounds?
Well, it's more that it's all of those things actually. There are many different clairs, as they call them, the clairs. The three most known and I think most encountered are clairvoyance, which literally is clear seeing, which means that the medium can see the spirit as if they were physically present in the room. There's clairaudience, which means the medium is hearing the spirit as if they were present in the room physically. It's a physical sensation. And then there's claircognizance, which is where you perceive what is the communication from a spirit in your mind's eye and your mind's ear. So you hear them, and sometimes you just simply get these very strong information impressions that you're able to then verbalize to the client. For myself, I'm primarily a claircognizant medium, but I also have the ability of clairvoyance and clairaudience. And oftentimes during the course of a reading, which generally runs about an hour, once I have them, in my head, as it were, I'm able then to lock on, and they actually become visible to me and audible to me as if they were sitting, in my vicinity at the table.
Mm-hmm. what point in your life? How old were you? When did you? I'm meaning to ask, how did you become aware that you had this ability?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. I like to say I've been weird since I was a kid. When I was 4 years old, I had a little record player, a little GE show and tell record player, which I loved. I would play my records up in my room, and I began hearing a male voice talking through the record player that had nothing to do with the record that was playing. And I would like pick up the tone arm off of the record. Hopefully some of our audience remembers what tone arms and record players are. But and I would go, "Who's in there? Who is that?" And this voice actually answered back to me and said, "My name is Charlie, and I'm your friend." And I thought it was just great. It was like, a lot of kids had imaginary friends. I thought, well, okay, this is mine. I just kind of thought this was a fun thing. And over the course of the next couple of years, Charlie would begin to talk to me about things that I would not necessarily, that a 5-year-old would not necessarily know. He would talk to me about the Vietnam War, which was going on at that time. He would talk to me about weather. He would talk to me about the environment. He just gave me all these little tidbits of things, but in a ways that a child could comprehend. When I told my parents about this, my dad was extremely startled. I mean, he turned white as a ghost. And come to find out, he also, as a child, had a friend named Charlie. My father was dying. He was not expected to live. He was 8 years old. He lived in rural Kentucky, and it was a very poor situation. And he said that, he was in his bed, and he woke up one morning. He looked up, and there was a man at the foot of the bed. And he said, "Who are you?" And the man said to him, "I'm Charlie, and I'm your friend. And it's not your time. So get up and go tell your parents." And my dad obviously survived. And I guess he had conversations on and off with Charlie up until around the time I was born. And then it stopped. And then Charlie began talking to me. So he was like the family spook. So fast forward, I went through, puberty, and then I had a whole bunch of other voices talking to me, and I wasn't really, hearing anything from Charlie. And when I was 34 years old, back in 1993, I was going through a great deal of turmoil in my life. And I got a visit in the middle of the night from a glowing orb of light that moved through my room. I had 2 little dogs. They were barking like crazy. They saw it too. And it began to materialize, and it took form, and it took on more of a human form. And I said, "Who are you?" And it answered back and said, "You used to call me Charlie, but now you can call me Charles." And, then he began to show me all kinds of things about my past life, one in particular, and he began to tell me about abilities that I had. And just the act of communicating with Charles, accepting this and allowing myself to, to do this, began to open up my abilities. And so within a year, I was actually experiencing spirits speaking to me, spirits other than Charles. And I began trying to work with people as a medium. I only did it on a part-time basis, just here and there by word of mouth only. I, did accept payment for some of the readings. Some of them I just did, for the experience. So overall, it's been about 21 years that I've been, a practicing medium. And only in the past year, almost exactly a year actually, have I been a medium full time. But it's been quite an experience so far. I've really had some great things happen.
Well, I was going to ask you when you started talking about Charlie if that was the Charles that you talk about on your website.
Yes, exactly. Charles is a spirit guide. He had a physical body at one time. He never actually died. His people, as he always calls them, made a decision to leave their physical bodies. I'm not sure how they did that, but he says that it's something that we will learn how to do in the not so far distant future once we master quantum physics. So apparently quantum physics has something to do with it. But he has his own website, if you will, which of course I blog it, but it's called thecommentaries.net. And Charles wants me to take dictation from him and write a book. with his commentaries on the world and about things like politics, religion, spirituality, and what have you. So, yes, Charles is not part of my typical scenario when I do readings with clients, but he has sometimes stepped in and said, and by the way, tell them this. But generally speaking, when I work as a medium, I work alone.
Now, do you ever find yourself with information that you would rather not give someone?
Sometimes, yes. Not because, this brings up a topic that I get asked a lot. So before I answer your question fully, if you don't mind, let me just say this, okay? A lot of people will come to a medium or someone, who practices, tarot or even other New Age arts, and will say, when am I going to die? This is, our mortality is a big question.
Mm-hmm.
How long will I live? What's going on? And I can tell you, based on my experience with Charles, there is no one-time set up for us to die. It's not written in stone.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who tells you you're going to die on September 23rd, 2020, I would be very skeptical of that person. That it's just not written. So, but yes, I will sometimes get information. I've had readings with clients where a relative who has crossed over steps in and says something to the effect of, your spouse is not telling you the truth about this or that, or your employer is, doing something behind your back, or, you're being stolen from. I mean, information like that. Generally, I don't get a lot of that, but occasionally I will get, cautions from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I have to really be very sensitive to how I word it. I do try to give the client all of the information that comes to me. But sometimes it really takes a lot to word it in the proper way so that they can use the information positively. That's really important.
Yeah. I have two more questions. One
Sure.
is the general public
Mm-hmm.
uses the word psychic, like they just, that's the word that people use.
Right. Yes.
Is what are the pros and cons of that? Is that like it's a misleading word? What do you have to say about that?
Well, it's true. Most people do lump mediums and psychics together, and there actually is a degree of psychic ability involved with mediumship. Okay, any practicing medium will tell you that they do have some level of psychic ability, and I'm included in that. I do, but based on my experience and the information that I have again been given from Charles, a medium is the bridge between the spirit and physical worlds. Okay. A psychic is someone who predicts future events based on information they receive either from the client's psyche or from other sources, which may include the spirit world as well. Now, it's my belief that it is not possible to predict the future with 100% accuracy because the future is unwritten. There are, however, parallel timelines that we all travel in, sometimes dozens of them, for each of us. And they're like train tracks. We can choose to cross over to a different track, or in some cases, we're bumped onto a different track by an outside event. What can be predicted, though, is a likely future outcome, which is based on, the path that the client is currently taking. Having said that, there are certain events which do appear in all of an individual's timelines. It does happen sometimes. Those events are inevitable. And the only difference being that depending on what track, what timeline they're traveling on, the event may take place at a different point in time. And again, I want to emphasize, for your listeners, there is no set time for any of us to die.
Mm-hmm.
There simply is not. And, if we had 20 more minutes, I could go into an explanation of how that works. But, I don't want anyone to sit in fear thinking that a medium or a psychic is going to give them some kind of, dreadful finality, with that information. I would walk away from anyone that says, okay, you're going to die on this day. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen like that.
It's personally, it's not a question it's not a question I would ever ask, because it's not really, it's like so much of the world is caught up in, is there a God? Is there not a God? I don't really have an opinion. It doesn't matter to me whether there is or there isn't. Right. So there are certain things that I'm very open-minded, but a lot of things I just don't have an opinion on. It's not, and wondering how long I'm going to live. I don't know. I'm alive now. That's good enough.
Right. Yeah. Living in the present, enjoying life as it is. You obviously you should, plan for the future. Make some plans, and not just sit idle and all that. I do believe in that. But yeah, people should not sit around wondering when they're going to die.
It's morbid.
It is. It's absolutely morbid. But oftentimes people who have a fixation on that will come to someone like me, and ask me those questions. And I will tell them right up front, I won't even have the reading. I will politely decline their business if that's what they're coming to me to find out, because that's just not constructive in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I've had some interesting experiences in my life, and I just, I also think quantum physics may well explain a lot of things, because the reality is so much stranger than we imagine. Mm-hmm. My last question was: you're living in a world of skeptics, whether you're even when it comes to religious faith, it's a world of skeptics. Yes. Do you encounter a lot of skepticism, or is it just not part of your experience?
Professionally, I don't encounter a lot of skepticism, because if someone is approaching me for a reading, that's basically I've never had anyone come to me under the guise of getting a reading just for the sole purpose of debunking me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or debunking, the whole concept of, spirits and life after death and all that. Now, that's not to say that won't happen at some point. Have I met people in casual conversation that they say, well, what do you do, Jeff? And I go, I'm a medium. And they go, you mean you talk to the dead? I said, well, they're spirits. They're still alive. And sometimes you'll get the eye roll, or they won't pursue the conversation any further. They'll just go, oh, that's interesting. And that person may be skeptical, and that's fine. I do not believe in trying to proselytize anyone. Even my late husband, Stan, who was a brilliant man. He was agnostic. He knew all about all of this, and he said, Jeff, he goes, I believe that you believe. And, please don't ever try to, convince me that, all this is going on. And he never believed in it. But now, over a decade after he has, died, he's actually come back to visit me. And, he told me very early on, you were right. There is something else. So, that's my experience. But yes, there's skeptics everywhere. And, that's okay. I think that, we need a little bit of skepticism. I don't think people should accept everything that's presented to them just at face value. I think we should ask questions. Sure. Even if you believe that, in the possibility of speaking with spirits, if you believe that that's possible, I think you should still, ask questions of the person that you're getting ready to pay to help you do that. Yeah. And see if their answers resonate with you, and if you feel it's a good fit. Someone can be a good medium but not be a right fit for a particular client. Yeah. Sometimes readings just don't go well. We have bad days too.
Speaking of readings, tell people your URL, your website, how people can read about you and find you.
Oh, sure. My website is jeffthemedium.com. It's just all run together, jeffthemedium.com. And I do have a blog. I don't blog heavily, but I do have a blog, and they can read some of my experiences there. My email address is jeff@jeffthemedium.com, and I welcome anyone to drop me an email or go to my website and visit. There's also a contact form on my website. I have several different tabs, and under the services tab, where I list, what I do and what my rates are, you can click and actually go to a box and communicate with me that way as well, and I'll get it via email. And I welcome, questions and clients from all over. I do phone readings as well as in-person readings in the Phoenix metropolitan area.
Jeff, it's been just really delightful to talk to you. You're a very, very nice person.
Well, thank you.
And
so are you.
thank you. And I like your husband a lot, Dave.
Yes.
So I'm glad you were on the podcast with us. And
yes, thank you so much for allowing me to to chat with you and with your audience.
Absolutely, I like interesting people and interesting topics. So a lot of the stuff they're always interesting guests, but sometimes it's a little dry. This was a nice, interesting topic for me, and I'll probably post this on next Wednesday, because we're going on vacation tomorrow. So,
right.
And I'll send you the link to it as soon as it's up on lgbtsr.org.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff McKeehan, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
You too.
Have a good
All
night.
Right. You too. Bye-bye.